We got a new Legacy sequel this weekend, I Know What You Did Last Summer, so today it's time to stop and rank all 4 I Know What You Did Last Summer movies from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of the I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, and give me that point of reference. Are you a longtime fan of the franchise, newer fan, or someone that just checked out the new one for the first time so you can't even rank them because you haven't even watched all of them? As for me, I went to high school in the 90s, and because of that, the Kevin Williamson meta-commentary slashers are some of my favorite era of slashers. Scream's my favorite horror movie, and then likewise I love The Faculty, but somehow I never watched I Know What You Did Last Summer, despite it being written by Kevin Williamson, coming out during that time period, and starring all of the stars of high school movies of that time period. So I don't have the same nostalgia and adoration for I Know What You Did Last Summer that I have for the Scream movies, so kind of, in that sense, relatively new to the franchise. What did I think about it? Let's get started. In last by about 10 miles, I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, a truly awful direct-to-video sequel to the franchise that basically borrows the general concept of The Fisherman, does its own thing with a whole new set of characters, and violates all the rules of the rest of the established franchise in order to have its own clever twist, spin, and mythology. There is really nothing to recommend here. There's 2 or 3 moments that are so bad it's good, including the big reveal, and then you have to just sit through 90 minutes of boredom outside of that. But like at the core, its basic idea is shockingly bad in order to just rehash what we've always done before. The big twist here, if you haven't seen it, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, is that the fisherman has come back as a zombie supernatural ghost thing and only can be killed by his hook that someone luckily happened to find on eBay just to do a prank. That's the basic concept of our movie, which is laughably stupid and bad, and it leads to a whodunit where you could not possibly guess who done it because it requires a violation of the rules. This has never been a supernatural franchise, but they come up with a surprise that's ghosts. Like, you can't guess that because it violates the rules of the franchise. The incident, the accident that leads everything to take place is so unbelievably stupid and selfish. It just makes all of the characters unlikable. None of them are entertaining. None of them are the comic relief. They're all just narcissists that you kind of want to watch them die. And just even on like a directorial fashion, the whole movie feels understaged but over-directed, where like the basic geography of chase sequences and action, you can't follow what's happening or why shots are done the way they are, but everything feels like it's trying to have like too creative of a flair to it, with a bunch of cutting and close-up shots and fisheye lenses. Like, there's all this creativity in the shots without stopping to think about how to do the sequence in general. And the movie has non-stop landscape shots. Like, they realized, hey, it's actually pretty out here. Why don't we, capture some of the landscapes? All right, back to the action. The whole movie's like, you'll be in the middle of the chase and it'll just like cut to an establishing shot and then another establishing shot, and then we get back to the chase. So you can see the director wanted to try and do something with this terrible movie, but at the end of the day, there's just nothing you could possibly do to make this very bad idea into anything better than an awful, cheap, just cynical cash grab to exploit a franchise for a few extra pennies. In third, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. As I mentioned before, I'm basically new to this franchise. I don't have my finger on the pulse of the fandom and what they do and do not like about the franchise, so I don't know the general sentiments about this one. For me, this was a very lackluster sequel that removed all the intrigue and interesting ideas from the franchise and just replaced it with slasher tropes. Now, I like slashers, so superficially speaking, all the gore, the kills, a little bit of Jack Black in there. Hey, I dig that kind of stuff. It was fun. It was entertaining. But the things that made the original film interesting to me felt absent from this one. And based on the Rotten Tomatoes critic and audience score, it seems like at least there are other people that agree with me. But once again, I don't really know the fandom. This could be a very hot take. But like, generally speaking, this movie felt to me like they had a generic spec script that someone had written about someone being tricked into going to an island from a radio giveaway only to find out that they're being chased by a killer. And then they went, I bet we could just convert that into I Know What You Did Last Summer too. And like, all right, let's, I still know what you did last summer. That's what this movie feels like, because all of kind of the intrigue of the mystery of the lore of who was chasing them, that's all just kind of gone here. And it's just a slasher on the island. And it's, we as the audience basically know who it is. There's a little bit of a twist with who's the extra person. But besides that, all that intrigue is gone. All of that other stuff, the mystery doesn't really work in this film because it's not designed to. The characters, the fishermen, all their actions kind of defy logic at all points and turns. There's like very inconsistent characters. There's a lot of unlikable characters in this franchise, and I feel like that's true once again with this movie. The director of the original film was originally supposed to return to do this movie, but they wanted to do one of these year turnarounds, the same thing that they did with Scream. And in retrospect, the original director chimed in on why he decided not to return. And he said, I agreed to do the sequel. I said yes initially, and they wanted to release it on the same weekend the following year. So that gave us 9 months, and there was no script. So they wanted me to commit to a 1.5-page outline, and I didn't like the outline. I thought it wasn't the right story. I didn't like the premise. It kind of killed the franchise a little bit. They had a chance to do something a bit different for me, and it didn't work. That's why I said no. I couldn't commit to a 1.5 pages with no guarantee that when we got it to the script, I was going to like it. And I feel like I read that and I go, yeah, if this was the direction they were headed, I could see why the original director would go, that's just misses all the stuff that I found interesting. And they replaced it with more gore, more kills, and Jack Black. Gore, kills, and Jack Black, I do like them, but the movie didn't have anything unique to offer or an expansion of the franchise, which I found interesting. Our runner-up, I Know What You Did Last Summer, 2025. For me, this was a good enough legacy sequel that isn't great, it's not groundbreaking, but it delivered enough of the thrills, the kills, lore expansion that I had a good enough time with it. And in particular, I liked that it was able to kind of get back to the intrigue and mystery. This one of all of them is the one that's the most a whodunit. It's the most that feels kind of like a Scream movie, except on the shoreline. And I dug that about the film. And had it stuck the landing, I would have even enjoyed it quite a bit more. I don't think the final reveals didn't fully work for me, but the ride along the way, I enjoyed that. The characters, while not being like new classics or anything like that, I found them enjoyable enough while they were on screen, had enough banter, enough of a history that was like, all right, I kind of buy into this. Our returning actors, I enjoyed seeing them as actors on screen more so than the specific characters. Once again, as I've said a zillion times in this video, this isn't a franchise that I have deep ties to going back 25 years, but these actors were big actors when I was in high school, so that generic, it's fun to see people from your formative years back on the big screen. Hey, we're all in our 40s now. All that fun stuff. So just seeing them return was kind of nice. And that, they had something to do. They tied into the plot. There's one in there that's just a cameo, but it kind of had to only just be a cameo. The others had a little bit more to do. And so I enjoyed it well enough. I just didn't buy into the ending. The specific reveal, both of the reveals, didn't feel earned, and I felt like we needed to do more work to get there. It seemed like everything else felt fleshed out, and then it was just kind of like, surprise, here's where we're going with this. And I was like, I'm not buying into it. I just can't buy into that. And so a good enough. If I was more invested in this franchise, I probably would have been more disappointed by it. But as someone that's generally speaking relatively new to the franchise, that just likes the genre, and I got some kills, I got some intrigue, I got to see some familiar faces, and the characters didn't drive me crazy, it was good enough. It worked well enough for me. I just wish they stuck the landing. But in first, the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, Kevin Williamson's other slasher franchise that he kicked off in the mid-late 90s. And once again, it has a who's who cast of high school movie stars of that era. And once again, it adds some extra twists and turns into the genre. Now, whereas Scream is more horror comedy with also a bunch of meta commentary on top of it, this one is playing around more so with the nature of the killer and the mystery involved with the investigation. Not exactly a whodunit, but a what really happened. And you're trying to unpack the layers of multiple years of deaths in the past, and we're trying to uncover something. And with the fisherman, some of the fun is that the fisherman is toying with them. Of course, leaves the notes, I know what you did last summer, but then he keeps doing all these other things to just create dread in his future victims. And doing all this stuff where he's like gaslighting people before gaslighting became part of the common vernacular. And that to me is what kind of brought this whole other element to it. Its own distinct vibe and nature to it. That he's not just trying to kill you real quick. He wants to have fun with you for several days. He wants to make you dread the next moments of your life, the next days of your life, where you don't know what's happening, why it's happening, or when it's going to happen. That element is what kind of took it to that next level for me, and what I felt was missing from I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, besides the fact that I only watched this for the first time just a few years ago, I don't think this one is nearly kind of on the same level in my mind as the Scream franchise or even The Faculty, where I don't think the characters are nearly as memorable. Some of them, like Ryan Felipe, is just way overcooked here. I think it could use a little bit more of that Kevin Williamson wit in some of the interactions to give it a little bit more of a flavor. So it's not, to me, one of the 90s classics. It kind of makes sense to me that it's one that I didn't gravitate towards nearly as quickly as those other ones, but still a solid film. And for those of you probably older, you can know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it's kind of nice when you find those movies from an era that you like, that's of a style that you like, from a screenwriter or director that you like, but somehow you missed it. And there's these movies that just feel like these big, obvious blind spots. That's what this was to me when I first watched it, of like, yeah, it's got Kevin Williamson flavor with these actors during that era that I enjoyed watching them in, and we're doing it. So that's what this place's movie in my life. And for all the different reasons, it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, I've got a zillion other horror rankings that I've gone through: the slashers, the exorcism movies, torture porn, all that fun stuff right over here. Hey, thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.